So I'll show you a bit of a close-up here for a moment. And one thing I'd like to point out is I'm quite close to this sort of grass that's sitting on top of this rocky knoll. And I want the grass to appear to be hanging over these stones. So where the rock goes under the grass a little bit, we need to have shadow, right? So these, my lowest values on my stones are going to be all along this edge. And then as we go around the corner, it's going to get darker in here as well. And this outer edge won't be quite as bright. But what I'm doing, because of the technique that I'm using, I'm not loading the knife up very much at all. There's very little paint on it. If I have a lot of paint on it, what happens is when I start my stroke at the top and push down, you invariably end up with a ridge of paint. You have extra paint that squeezes out from behind the knife, and then you excuse me. Oh, excuse me. And then you end up with a blob of the gray, and that really kind of defeats the purpose of making the rock look as though it recedes under the grass line. Now I could start my stroke at the bottom and push up, but then I run the danger of overlapping the yellow, because the line at which you're applying the paint is hidden by the blade itself. So this is kind of the way I do it then. And if every square speck of wash-in is not covered, it doesn't matter, because I've already put the wash-in's dark enough, it's got enough pigment, enough actual paint there, that structurally the layer of paint will be just fine. I'm starting with cobalt blue and ultramarine blue and raw umber. Okay, I'm going to back you out now for a second. Well, not backing you out for a second, just backing you out. Backing the camera out. Okay, that's pretty dark yet. I think I can reserve that to this area back in here. And I do tend to get a bit persnickety, a bit fussy with my little knife strokes. Again, that's why it's such an important thing to back up now and then and look at what you're doing. Because if you just keep doing it and you never take that break, you will eventually stand back and look at it and you will think to yourself, what was I doing? I might bring this grass a little bit down in here, so I'm just not going to paint right to the edge there. This little top ledge of rock will have a bit of a masonry look to it. But I don't want it to look too perfect. Don't want it to look like human hands have stacked it, that's for sure. I'm sticking with a higher level of blues over on the edges. Again, trying to keep those colors cooler in temperature. And we'll use a little more raw umber as we work our way into this. A bit of light here, and certainly onto the most foreground rocks where the light will be catching them more directly. We'll do that as well. I want to be careful. I don't want to go too high in value. It happens so easily. To me it does. You know, and then you run out of places to go. I love to put my highlights on at the end. Really helps things to sparkle suddenly. Okay, I think it's safe to do that. Very low pressure, very, very gentle pressure now on the knife. I'm kind of guessing that my value is going to be alright there. Guessing and hoping. It doesn't happen too often that I get it exactly how I'd like it. On the first shot. In that sense, painting with a knife is, well, using this technique where you would like to have some tooth of the canvas showing in a lot of areas. Yeah, with a knife you cover it up so quickly that your technique has the appearance of changing. And you don't want your painting to look like that. You want it to look fairly consistent all the way through. Consistent of technique, that is. Okay. I'm not a fan of burnt umber. If I were to use burnt umber in this area that I'm painting now, I feel, to my eye anyway, burnt umber just doesn't mix as cleanly as raw umber does. When you mix it with other colors. On its own, fine, it's just a dark brown. But yeah, when you start to throw other colors in there with it, or you know, you mix them on the same pile, so to speak, I find burnt umber just starts to look, yeah, a little muddy. Is that the word? That's how I see it anyway. Seems funny to say, considering that in general these grays can all have a bit of a muddy look to them. Okay, I'm going to start introducing light here now, because this is a log that's just drifting on the shoreline or washed up against the shoreline. And if I keep my values too low over here, this will just kind of stop the eye, you know. You'll see all this, but this will just kind of fall off, and I'd like to continue the interest right to the edge. And I do want that piece of driftwood to catch some light. But if it's too dark behind that driftwood, it's going to jump out by the time I throw that higher chroma. Because I'm going to higher chroma and higher value burnt sienna on there. Because I am going to be putting a bit of burnt sienna in there. I can't avoid it. One of my favorite colors. Bit of finger painting mixed in with that. Okay, we'll start cooling that off as we have just not really direct sunlight on here yet, if I'm going to at all, but more ambient light here. It's just sort of trailing off. We get into this crevice. I would like certainly things to become a little bluer and obviously lower value. Now that's going to be the bottom of the trunk, so that would be just kind of make a bit of a rudimentary design where it would go into the roots. Anyway, talk, stop talking, do some painting. Okay, I think we're in danger of staying a bit too light, too high in value. So we'll go one step darker. How would that be? Yeah, that's better. Getting into the shadows, I don't have to worry too much about strong design. It's really about just leaving the impression that it's all part of the same rocky structure. Yeah, I'm not going to have grass coming down here. That would tend to chop too much of a slice going vertically. So we'll just carry this one through. Now, I was looking at this little nib of this nub of rock that I painted in there, or washed in, and I feel it just needs a little more meat to it. So I'm rather than wash it in larger, I'm just going to make sure that as I paint around it, I'll leave room for it to be a bit of a bigger piece of structure. All right. I think that could take a little more light there. Some happy light. See, so I've kind of blobbed it on here. I'm going to do a little more blobbing there, but that's why I really did not want blobs right against the grass, because it would look like it was sitting in front of the grass. Here, I'm intending to make the rock look like it's sitting in front of the grass. So we'll approach it a bit differently. But yeah, I've gone skinny on the paint up here. If you put blobs in there, you probably won't be happy with it, and you'll get in trouble with your mother. So, there's no point in doing that. Okay. I'm going to indicate a little more light sitting there. And there. Now that I have this whole area painted in, I see that I can afford to raise the value a little bit in certain areas. So I'm quite happy to do that. And as I said, I'm quite happy to get blobby about it too. After all, if you don't have any blobby areas, what's the point in using a knife? Let's see now. How about if we just put a little bit of ultramarine blue and burnt sienna in a couple of spots. I know you don't see it too much just yet, but were you to buy this painting and own it, and over the years look closely at it, you'd probably say to yourself, well, it's too bad they didn't Too bad they left the broad dark lines with no paint at all. No color at all. That would be a shame. Or maybe it wouldn't. As I said, maybe it's just my own mental illness that makes me fuss over such small details. I know, to look at my work in general, I don't seem to be a fussy guy, but for some reason, some things, I'm downright neurotic. Just ask my children. Actually, ask my children and my wife. Okay. We're going to leave that sit. Well, I let it sit for a moment, and I was going to back up and sit down in a chair to have a look, and as soon as I stood up I thought, no, there's something needs to be done here. Needs more strength. Because I'm easily able to raise my values much higher as I move to the right, more towards the focal area. So I'm going to get brazen here. And I'm going to throw a little bit of light on this. Okay. A couple of strokes starting from the bottom. Okay. Oh, that was a mistake. The more times I have to go into it, the more strokes I have to add to it, the more difficult it becomes, because you require a lighter and lighter and lighter touch. And then eventually you've got so much paint on, you may as well scrape it. Rest some paper towel or toilet paper against it and draw off the excess paint and the excess oil, residual oil that's sitting on there. Okay. Now, me stand up, me have look. This is a little bit strong here. I think there are little things that niggle at me, but they're little things. So I think what we'll do is play with these rocks next, because by the time I have this in, we might look at that and say, perfect. Sometimes you really have to trust yourself. In fact, you know, with enough practice, you'll trust yourself more and more. And, you know, put it this way, if you never trust what you've got done, if you only look at a small area, you know, what have you, and think, oh, that's not strong enough, that could be more intense, that could be more colorful, or this could be stronger, or this purple would be nice if it stood out more. Remember where you are. Keep it in context. Context is everything, because if you intensify this, how are you then going to be able to draw the interest of your painting into the focal area? You've got to remember that you need a slash of light and intensity, you know, higher chroma in various parts of your painting, and it needs to form some sort of a design. My hope here, my plan, as I always say, is really the light's going to start here, it's going to come, it's going to hit here. This is light, but it's not terribly important. This light's going to come across from this tree, follow its way down, come across here, and end possibly in this rocky area, or this in here will go more to shadow, and then I'll reintroduce the light onto this rock. That's the plan. We'll see how it goes. I think that's it for now. Thanks for having a peek. See ya.